The black waitress helps a drunk billionaire get home. 1 week later, she becomes the hotel owner. The words didn't make sense, not in this moment, not with the blood still wet on her hands. "Ma'am, you need to move back." The officer's voice was sharp, but his eyes flicked down to her stained apron with something that looked like pity. Or fear. "I just found him like that. I didn't do anything," she said, her voice too high, too thin. "Ma'am." He held up his hand as 2 more officers pushed past her into the suite. The door swung wide open, revealing the same plush hotel room from just a week ago. Only now, it was painted in red. The man on the floor wasn't moving. His silk shirt clung to his chest, dark and soaked. The billionaire. Ezra Lockhart. She didn't know if he was alive. The cop turned back to her. "How did you get the master key?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Behind them, someone whispered, "Is that her? The waitress?" She flinched. Everyone was looking now. The officer stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You were with him the night of the gala, right?" She nodded. Slowly. "Then you might want to tell me exactly what happened. Because this," he glanced over his shoulder, "doesn't look like a coincidence." 1 week earlier, the morning started with sweat. Renee Jefferson stood in the kitchen of the Fairmont Grand, one of the oldest luxury hotels in Charleston, South Carolina, wiping the back of her neck with a dish towel. The summer heat had already seeped through the walls. The air was thick with the smell of bacon, eggs, and bitter coffee. She leaned on the counter and stared out the narrow window above the sink. All she saw was the alley, cracked concrete, overflowing dumpsters, a single cat pawing at something unseen. It was quiet back here. The kind of quiet you learn to appreciate when you spent 10 hours a day pretending to be invisible. "Renee, you're up front today," called Frankie, the floor manager. Her voice bounced off the tile like a warning. Renee turned. "What? Why? My shift's supposed to be in the kitchen." Charlotte called out. "You're in the black uniform. You know what that means." Renee sighed. The black uniform meant the front dining room. White tablecloths. Rich guests. High expectations. And no screw-ups. She pulled the uniform from her locker, a crisp button-down shirt, black slacks, and the apron that wrapped twice around her waist. It fit tighter than it used to. She hadn't had time for real meals in weeks, just bites of cold fries or leftover pastries she smuggled home for her brother. By 10:15 a.m., she was in position, tray in hand, smile fixed. The dining room was quiet, but not for long. Saturday brunch always brought the regulars. Old money families who tipped light and talked loud. Out-of-town lawyers, their voices gravelly from too much bourbon the night before. A few college girls with big sunglasses and tiny dogs. Renee knew their drinks, their weird food preferences, and the way none of them looked her in the eye. It was fine. She didn't want to talk to them either. Then the man walked in. He didn't belong. Not because of what he wore, plain white tee, jeans, boots that looked scuffed on purpose. Not because of his face, handsome in a lazy, careless kind of way, like he hadn't earned it and didn't care. It was the way people reacted to him. Frankie stood up straighter. The hostess smiled too wide. Even the bartender stopped wiping glasses. Renee narrowed her eyes. She knew rich when she saw it, but this wasn't just money. This was power. "Ezra Lockhart," someone whispered. Of course. The billionaire. The tech guy who owned half the apps on her brother's phone. No one ever saw him in person. He was supposed to be in New York or Tokyo or Dubai. Not Charleston. But there he was. Walking straight toward the corner booth. Renee didn't think he'd notice her. He didn't at first. He sat down. Ordered black coffee and nothing else. Then around noon, she saw it, the shift. His hands were shaking. His eyes weren't focused. He slurred when he said, "Refill." Something was off. She bent close, pretending to wipe the table. "Sir, are you okay?" He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. "I can't drive," he mumbled. "Do you need someone to call?" "No. Don't. Don't tell them." He looked scared. She hesitated. She should have walked away. Told Frankie. Let security handle it. But something about his voice pulled her in. It was like he'd forgotten how to be human and didn't want to admit it. She helped him to his feet. The manager didn't stop her. No one did. Because who questions a billionaire? She led him through the back exit, past the kitchens, down the private hallway that connected to the suites. He leaned on her more than once. She thought he might collapse. "I'll walk you to your room," she said quietly. He gave her a crooked smile. "You don't even know where it is." "Sure I do," she said. "You think they don't gossip in the laundry room?" That made him laugh. She got him to the penthouse. Helped him into bed. Pulled the covers over him. Told herself she was being kind, not stupid. Before she left, he caught her hand. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Renee." Thank you, Renee. She left without another word. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. Or the envelope that showed up at the front desk the next morning. It was thick. Heavy. No note. Just her name, written in clean, blocky letters. Inside was a check. And a key. A master key. Renee stared at the key in her hand. It was cold. Heavy. Not like the plastic cards she sometimes found on the floor after guests checked out. This was solid metal, engraved with the Fairmont crest and a barely visible MK etched on the back. Master key. She turned it over again, then looked at the check. Her name was typed at the top, but the signature at the bottom was scrawled in a sharp, hurried line. Ezra Lockhart. $10,000. Her chest tightened. It didn't feel real. The zeros looked like a joke. There was no note, no explanation, just the key and the check, handed to her by a bellhop who shrugged and said, "Guy in 1101 said this is for you. Said not to open it until you got home." She was home now. Well, technically, her aunt's two-bedroom duplex on the edge of North Charleston. The walls were thin, the neighbors loud, and her little brother's sneakers were kicked off in the middle of the hallway like always. She set the key down on the chipped kitchen counter and picked up the check again. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know if it was anger or something else. Because she knew what this looked like. And she really didn't want to think that was what he meant. 10,000? Shauna's voice cracked like a gunshot. Renee winced and pulled the phone away from her ear. Can you not yell while I'm trying to figure out whether this is hush money or some kind of setup? Girl, it's definitely one of those. I didn't do anything. You put a drunk billionaire to bed. That's not doing something. Shauna snorted. In his world, it is. People don't help guys like that without expecting something. Well, I didn't expect anything. Then why did he give you a key? Renee rubbed her eyes. She hadn't slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ezra's face, tired, pale, like he hadn't slept in days. She remembered the way he gripped her wrist before she left the room. The way he looked at her like she was the last real thing in a fake world. I think he was just trying to say thank you, she said finally. Shauna let the silence stretch. Then, maybe. Or maybe he's pulling you into something bigger. Rich people don't give away access to their world without a reason. Renee glanced at the key again. She thought about throwing it away. Instead, she slipped it into the back pocket of her jeans. The next time she saw him was 3 days later. He was sober. Still quiet, still tired looking, but clearer. More focused. He walked into the restaurant like he owned it, which he might, for all she knew, and sat in the same booth. She waited until Frankie turned her back, then walked over and set down a glass of water without being asked. He looked up at her. You kept it. I did. He nodded. Good. Why? Because I need someone who's not fake, he said. And I think you're the only one in this building who doesn't want anything from me. She raised an eyebrow. You just gave me a check for 10 grand. That was a test. Did I pass? You didn't cash it. She pulled the envelope out of her apron and dropped it on the table between them. Maybe I'm just waiting for the right time. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What are you really doing here? She asked. Ezra leaned back in the booth and looked around the restaurant. His eyes were sharp again now. Not drunk. Not confused. Watching everything. I bought this hotel 2 months ago. Through a holding company. No one knows yet. Renee blinked. You're serious? I'm thinking about selling it, he said. But not until I know what's broken. She stared at him. He shrugged. You learn more from a waitress than you do from an operations manager. Everyone lies to me. You didn't. I still don't know what you want from me. I want the truth, he said. About this place. About how it really runs. Who screws over who. What the staff whispers about behind closed doors. I want you to show me the guts of the hotel. And in exchange? You get paid. Real money. And a chance to be something more than just a name on a schedule. She hesitated. Because it was crazy. Because it felt like a trap. But also because a part of her, the part that scraped together rent every month and skipped meals to make sure her brother could eat, wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe this was real. What happens if I say no? Ezra leaned in. Then I go back to trusting the same liars who keep this place rotting from the inside. And that'd be a shame. She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. By Friday, she'd learned more than she ever wanted to know. The front desk was skimming charges on wealthy guests and pocketing the refunds. The head of maintenance was ghost booking luxury suite repairs that never happened. One of the bellhops was selling access to empty rooms by the hour. And housekeeping? They were covering it all up. Renee kept notes. Quietly. Carefully. Ezra met her every night in the staff lounge, long after hours. He didn't ask dumb questions. He just listened. Then one night, he asked something that wasn't about the hotel. "Why are you still here?" She paused. "What do you mean?" "You're too smart for this job. Too aware. You're not just trying to survive. You're looking for something." Renee looked at her hands. "My mom used to work here," she said. "She was a housekeeper. Got sick, cancer, when I was 13. I dropped out of school to take care of her." Ezra was quiet. "She died in this hotel," Renee said. "Right here. In one of the rooms. They didn't tell anyone. Just sent her home like nothing happened. She couldn't afford to stop working. So she worked herself into the grave." Ezra didn't interrupt. "And the thing is," she said, her voice tight, "this place pretends to care. It doesn't. It never did." He nodded slowly. "So why stay?" "Because someone has to remember what she gave up. Someone has to make sure it's not just dust under the rug." Ezra didn't say anything for a long time. Then he stood and handed her a folder. "What's this?" "Everything you need to know about the holding company that owns the hotel. All of it's in your name now." She froze. "What? I signed it over last night." "Why would you?" "Because I don't want it anymore," he said. "And you're the only person I trust not to ruin it." The blood drained from her face. She opened the folder. Her name was printed at the top of the ownership transfer documents. "Ezra, what the hell, this can't be legal." "It is," he said. "And if it's not, my lawyers will make it legal. You can't just give me a hotel." "I didn't. You earned it." She looked up at him, stunned. "You helped me when I didn't deserve it," he said. "Now I'm doing the same for you." Then he walked away. And she stood there, holding a building in her hands. But a week later, Ezra was lying in a pool of blood, and nothing made sense anymore. The siren screamed through the Charleston night. Renee sat on the edge of the curb outside the Fairmont Grand, her apron stiff with dried blood, her breath shallow. Red and blue lights danced over the polished stone columns of the entrance. Uniformed officers moved in and out of the lobby with quiet urgency, trying not to spook the handful of late-night guests watching from behind the velvet ropes. She'd given her statement. Twice. They still didn't believe her. "You were the last person seen with him. Last person with access to his suite. You had a master key." She didn't argue. What was the point? The only person who could have confirmed her story was unconscious. Or dead. They hadn't told her which. And now the folder, those ownership documents Ezra had given her, was gone. She'd stashed it under her mattress that same night. Checked on it every morning. Watched it like a secret she couldn't afford to tell. Now it was missing. She didn't know what scared her more. That someone had stolen it, or that someone had known to look for it in the first place. The doors opened, and Detective Morales stepped out. Late 40s, tired eyes, a tie that had seen better years. He walked straight to her, squatted down beside her on the curb, and handed her a bottle of water. "You said he gave you ownership of the hotel?" "Yes," Renee said. "You have any proof of that?" "I had proof." "Someone take it?" She nodded. "I think so." He took a long breath. "Listen. You're not under arrest. Yet. But if Lockhart dies, this becomes something else. Fast. I didn't hurt him." Morales didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Can you tell me why his security detail was suddenly cut 3 days ago?" Renee blinked. "What?" "We found a termination memo in the main office. Dated Monday. Effective immediately. Every bodyguard let go. He was alone tonight. Did he tell you anything about that?" "No," she said. "He didn't." Morales studied her for a beat. "You know, the thing about power is, someone always wants it more. Someone close. Someone who knows how to smile in your face while stabbing you in the back." Renee stared at him. "Are you saying this was planned?" "I'm saying billionaires don't bleed out alone unless someone makes it happen." She looked down at the water bottle in her hands. Her fingers trembled. "Go home," he said. "Don't leave town. I'll be in touch." She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat on the edge of her bed with her brother knocked out in the next room, cartoons still playing softly on the TV. She kept thinking about the last time she saw Ezra, really saw him. It was 2 days before the incident. They were standing on the hotel rooftop, under a sky smeared with orange and lavender, the Atlantic wind warm against their faces. He'd handed her a folded piece of paper. "Just in case," he'd said. She hadn't opened it. Not yet. She reached into her backpack now and pulled it out. The envelope had no name. Just a tiny wax seal pressed into the flap. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Renee. If you're reading this, then something went wrong. This hotel has rot in the walls, and not just metaphorically. There are people in this building who've been playing a long game. They don't care who gets buried as long as they keep climbing. I tried to buy them out quietly. They figured it out. I got sloppy. I got tired. You know who's dirty. You've seen it. And I know you. You won't back down. This place is yours now. That's not a gift, it's a fight. Be careful who smiles at you. And don't trust the man with the silver pen. Ezra. Renee let the letter fall into her lap. The man with the silver pen? What the hell did that mean? She stood up too fast, heart racing, mind spiraling. The envelope had been sealed, unread, untouched. Ezra had known something would happen. Had known someone would try to stop her from taking control. And whoever had taken that folder knew exactly what they were doing. She needed answers. Fast. The next morning, she walked back into the hotel like she belonged there. No apron. No uniform. No tray. Just jeans, sneakers, and the truth burning in her chest like a live wire. People stared. Whispers followed her through the lobby. She ignored them. She headed straight to the back office where the general manager, Daniel Holt, was waiting. Daniel had the kind of face you remembered in pieces, clean-shaven, pale, eyes like fogged glass. And always a silver Mont Blanc pen in his front pocket. He stood when she walked in. "Miss Jefferson," he said. "I was told you were placed on leave pending the investigation." She stepped forward, pulling the letter from her jacket. "Ezra Lockhart gave me ownership of this hotel. I have reason to believe you knew that. And I think you had something to do with that folder going missing from my apartment." Daniel's smile was tight. Controlled. "Those are serious accusations. Where were you last night between 9 and midnight?" He raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? I was there when they found him, Daniel. I saw the room. It wasn't a robbery. It was personal. Someone who knew him." He didn't flinch. Just reached for the Mont Blanc pen in his pocket and slowly clicked it. "Careful, Renee," he said softly. "The deeper you dig, the more likely you are to be buried." Her breath caught. "You think I'm scared of you?" she asked. "No," he said. "I think you should be." Then he turned and walked out of his own office. She stood there, pulse pounding in her throat. The letter burned in her hand. Ezra had warned her. The silver pen. Now she knew who she was up against. And someone had tried to make sure she'd never get to this moment. But they'd failed. Now it was her move. Renee sat in the empty office and didn't move. Daniel Holt's words clung to the air like smoke. "Careful, Renee. The deeper you dig, the more likely you are to be buried." He knew. Not just about the letter. About the folder. About the master key. Maybe even about Ezra's plan to give her the hotel. And now he was telling her, without saying it outright, that if she kept pushing, she might end up like Ezra. The thing was, she didn't scare easy. Not anymore. She grabbed the room phone on the manager's desk and dialed internal maintenance. "Hey, Jerry? It's Renee from the front staff. Listen, I need the footage from the hallway outside the penthouse. Last night. Between 8 and midnight. Can you pull that for me?" There was a long pause on the line. "Then, you know Daniel already requested all of that, right?" Her heart sank. "Did he delete it?" Another pause. "Can't say. Jerry, please. I just need 5 minutes with it." "You didn't hear it from me," he said, voice dropping. "But the original files were pulled to an offline drive before Holt got here this morning. If you want answers, you need to talk to Malik. 3rd floor, IT. She hung up, grabbed her phone, and took the stairs. Malik was barely 20 and always smelled like Red Bull. His tiny office was stacked with fried hard drives, busted routers, and a busted futon he'd clearly slept on more than once. He looked up when she knocked. "Renee? Damn, I thought you quit." "Not yet." He gave her a half-smile and tilted his head. "You're looking for the hallway feed, huh?" She nodded. "I need to know who went into Ezra Lockhart's room last night." Malik leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a beat. Then he grabbed a USB stick and plugged it into his desktop. "Just so you know," he said, "this isn't hotel protocol. Neither is attempted murder." His eyes met hers. Then he opened the folder. It took a minute to find the right file. The screen split into 6 squares, different angles from the 12th floor hallway. One camera showed the elevators, another faced the penthouse door, the rest pointed down the corridor in each direction. Malik hit play. At 9:37 p.m., Renee herself appeared, leading a housekeeping manager to the end of the hall. Ezra had requested new linens, that part was normal. They left 5 minutes later. She remembered that. Then, at 10:04 p.m., a man in a dark suit exited the elevator. Head down. No badge. "Zoom in," Renee said. Malik did. The man looked up just before he turned down the hallway. His face came into frame for half a second. It was Daniel Holt. Renee leaned in. "There. Right there. That's him." Malik paused the screen. He had a key. They watched Daniel slip something into the door lock, push it open, and step inside. The door shut behind him. He didn't come out for 47 minutes. When he did, he looked straight into the camera, expression blank. Can you send me this clip? Already in your inbox. Renee backed up. Thanks, Malik. I owe you. Wait, Renee. Be careful. If Daniel knows you've got this. He won't, she said. Not until it's too late. She didn't go home. Instead, she went to the only person who might actually know what Ezra was really involved in, Frankie, the floor manager. Frankie had been at the Fairmont Grand for 22 years. She'd watched GMs come and go, trained every server, and knew more secrets than the front desk safe. Renee found her on the service patio, smoking like she always did when something big went down. I heard you were back, Frankie said without turning around. Didn't think you'd have the guts. Renee walked up next to her. Ezra gave me the hotel. Frankie exhaled slowly. That's what I heard. And Daniel knew about it. Now Frankie looked at her. Renee, listen to me. That man has been quietly pulling strings here since the last owners disappeared. You think Ezra was smart? Daniel's smarter. And way more patient. He tried to kill Ezra. You can't prove that. I have hallway footage. It puts him in the room right before Ezra was found. Frankie flicked her cigarette into the gravel. That's not enough. Not for the cops, not for the board, and definitely not for court. You need more than footage. You need motive. You need money. Renee's mouth was dry. Then help me. Frankie studied her. You really want this place? You want the debt, the politics, the vultures waiting for you to trip? I want the truth. And I want to make sure Ezra didn't bleed out for nothing. Frankie was quiet a long time. Then she reached into her pocket and handed Renee a flash drive. What's this? Accounting logs. For the last 3 years. Daniel's been laundering through a shell cleaning company. Nobody caught it. Not until Ezra started poking around. Renee stared at it. Frankie nodded once. He found out last week. That's when he started writing the ownership transfer. And when he cut the security detail. Because he thought he could handle it on his own, Frankie said. He thought he could outplay Daniel. Renee swallowed. But he couldn't. Frankie looked at her hard. Maybe you can. By midnight, she had everything in one folder, the hallway footage, the letter, the forged contracts from the shell cleaning company, the money trail, and the whistleblower testimony from Frankie. She made 6 copies. 1 on a cloud drive, 2 USBs, 3 encrypted links sent to journalists she knew wouldn't hesitate to run it. Then she sent 1 email. To Detective Morales. Subject, evidence, Ezra Lockhart attempted murder. And below that, just a single sentence. I can prove who did it. Meet me tomorrow at 7 a.m., rooftop. She hit send. Then she sat back in her chair, staring out the window at the quiet city below. Someone had tried to erase her. Now she was about to erase them. But deep down, one question still burned. If Ezra survives, what will he say? The sky was just beginning to fade from black to deep gray when Renee stepped out onto the rooftop of the Fairmont Grand. Her breath came in steady clouds as she crossed the gravel-covered expanse. The wind was brisk, sharper than usual for a June morning in Charleston. She pulled her jacket tighter and glanced toward the far corner, where she'd told Morales to meet her. But he wasn't alone. A second man stood beside him, broad-shouldered, dressed in a plain navy overcoat. Older. Hair combed so precisely it looked painted on. His shoes gleamed. Expensive. The man with the silver pen. Even from here, Renee saw it clipped neatly into his inner pocket as the coat flared open. She stopped walking. Detective, she said, keeping her voice even. We agreed on a private meeting. Morales looked at the man beside him. This is James Radford. Legal counsel for Ezra Lockhart's estate. Estate? Renee echoed. He's not dead, is he? No, Radford answered, stepping forward. His voice was smooth. Practiced. He's in a coma. Stable. But the doctors say the next 72 hours are critical. Whether or not he wakes up, remains uncertain. Renee swallowed. Coma. Somehow, that hurt worse than death. Ezra wasn't gone. But he was locked away behind something she couldn't reach, and the clock was ticking. Morales gestured toward her. You said you had something. I do. She reached into her bag and pulled out the folder. Proof that Daniel Holt laundered money through the hotel for years, that he forged the staff terminations, and that he entered Ezra's suite the night of the attack. Radford didn't move. Didn't blink. You're making serious accusations, he said. I'm offering serious proof. She handed the folder to Morales. He opened it, started flipping through. I sent this to 2 national reporters last night. Just so we're clear, Renee said. If anything happens to me, this story goes public, full blast. And Daniel doesn't just lose his job, he goes to prison. Morales gave a slow whistle. This is solid. Chain of custody might be rough, But we can build something off this. Radford took the folder from him, his eyes scanning the pages quickly. She watched his jaw tighten ever so slightly at the sight of Ezra's letter. You knew, she said. Didn't you? Radford finally looked at her. I know a lot of things. But Lockhart never told me about this transfer. That letter changes everything. You're damn right it does. It names Holt. It proves motive. And it proves Ezra didn't want this hotel destroyed, he wanted it saved. Radford tapped the edge of the folder against his palm. Then he said something that chilled her. If Mr. Lockhart dies, and this ownership transfer is valid, you become the sole beneficiary of his controlling shares in the hotel group. She blinked. What? He gave her a tight smile. You don't just own this hotel. You'd own a controlling interest in the parent company. 47%. That makes you the majority shareholder. The board has to follow your lead. Renee stared at him, stunned. He didn't tell me that. I doubt he had the time. The rooftop suddenly felt colder. Morales stepped between them. So now what? We let the evidence speak, Renee said. And I talked to the board. By noon, she stood in front of the hotel's private boardroom, surrounded by 7 people who'd never looked her in the eye before. Now, they couldn't stop staring. Some were angry. Some confused. One woman, older, regal, looked like she was suppressing a grin. This is irregular, one of the men said, flipping through the contract. A waitress inherits a controlling stake in a multi-property brand? It's unheard of. Illegal? Renee asked calmly. He didn't answer. You can fight it in court, she said. You might even win, eventually. But everything in that folder is real. You'll be defending your position while the public reads about money laundering, assault, and attempted murder tied to one of your top executives. Your shareholders won't like that. Another board member leaned forward. What exactly are you asking for? Daniel Holt is terminated. Effective immediately. All assets frozen. And I take over as acting CEO of this location. We bring in a new compliance team, clean out the entire executive tier. You'll get stability, and I'll rebuild what Ezra tried to fix. Silence. Then the regal woman cleared her throat. I vote in favor. Another followed. Then another. It wasn't unanimous. But it didn't have to be. When the vote passed, Renee sat down in Ezra's chair. The room smelled like old leather and tension. She'd won. But the moment felt hollow. Because Ezra wasn't here. And Daniel Holt wasn't gone. That night, she walked the halls of the hotel alone. She paused outside the penthouse, staring at the new locks. Security guards stood beside the door now. The entire floor had been sealed. She leaned her forehead against the wall. You're still here, she whispered. It wasn't a prayer. It was a promise. Behind her, an elevator dinged softly. She turned. Daniel Holt stepped out, smooth as ever, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Security should have stopped you, she said, voice flat. They still think I'm the boss, he said. Some habits take time to break. You're trespassing. You're scared. No, she said, taking a step closer. I'm ready. Daniel tilted his head. You think this ends with a board vote? That chair you're sitting in? It doesn't make you powerful. It makes you a target. She didn't flinch. You already tried to make me disappear. You failed. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You're too stubborn for your own good. Just like Ezra. She stared at him, her voice low and razor-sharp. If you touch me, I burn everything. I send the rest of those documents to every outlet on the East Coast. I go loud. Daniel's smile faded. I'm not scared of shadows anymore, Renee said. Daniel stepped back into the elevator, the silver pen still gleaming from his coat. I'll see you around, Miss Jefferson. Then the doors closed. And for the first time in her life, Renee felt exactly what power tasted like. Not money. Not control. Conviction. And the terrifying weight of what comes next. The next morning, Renee opened the hotel staff meeting alone. Frankie stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the crowd like a hawk. Maintenance leaned against the back wall. Housekeeping sat in quiet rows. Bellhops, concierges, kitchen workers, every uniform in the hotel was there. Faces she'd known for years. Faces she used to work beside. And now, somehow, she was standing in front of them. Acting CEO. She didn't have a speech prepared. Didn't want one. They deserved the truth. I'm not gonna waste your time, she said, stepping up to the mic in the corner of the ballroom. You've all heard the rumors. I'll make it plain. She took a breath. Ezra Lockhart gave me control of this hotel before he was attacked. Daniel Holt tried to cover it up. But he failed. That word, attacked, sent a ripple through the room. You've all lived under management that treated you like you didn't matter. That ends now. She saw some of the older housekeepers look at each other. A few sat up straighter. I know what it's like to clean puke out of carpets for minimum wage. To walk past guests who don't see you. To watch someone steal from the company and then get promoted for it. A murmur rolled through the ballroom. I've been one of you longer than I've been up here. I won't forget that. And I sure as hell won't let anyone make you invisible again. She stepped back from the mic. The silence was long. Then Frankie clapped once. Loud. Sharp. It spread. And within seconds, the ballroom erupted. Not everyone stood. Not everyone clapped. But the energy had changed. They were watching her now, not waiting for her to fail. Waiting to see if she meant it. The first person to call her was someone she never expected, Ezra's sister, Alina. They spoke late that afternoon. Alina's voice was clipped, precise, but not cold. I was told you're acting on behalf of my brother's interests. I am. He's never trusted easily, Alina said. If he trusted you, that's enough for me. But I'm going to be direct. We have enemies, Ms. Jefferson. Ezra made them when he tried to clean house. You're in their sights now. I know. There was a pause on the line. I've taken over his legal affairs until he wakes up. If you need backing, protection, money, you come to me. Renee didn't hesitate. I need all three. Alina's voice softened just a touch. Then you have them. But the moment Renee stepped back into the executive wing that evening, she knew something was wrong. The hallway was too quiet. A custodian cart was tipped slightly, mop hanging awkwardly over the edge. And the glass door to her office was ajar. She approached slowly. Pushed the door open. Her desk was empty. No laptop. No notes. No folders. Gone. Except for a single envelope. It sat dead center on the desk. No name. No seal. She opened it with numb fingers. Inside was a photograph. Grainy. Black and white. A hotel corridor. She had to study it to understand what she was looking at. A man, Ezra, was handing something to another man. In shadow. But as she leaned closer, the outline of the man's coat, the angle of the shoulder. It wasn't Daniel Holt. It was Radford. James Radford. The man with the silver pen wasn't just a warning. He was in on it. And Ezra knew. She flipped the photo over. A single line was written in black marker on the back. You trusted the wrong man. Her knees went weak. Radford had stood on that rooftop beside Morales, calm, collected, acting like her ally. He wasn't. He was playing his own game. And worse, Ezra hadn't had time to warn her. But someone else had tried. This photo hadn't come from her enemies. It came from someone inside. Someone who still wanted the truth out. Renee grabbed the photo, stuffed it into her coat, and left her office without locking the door. Because now she had a bigger problem. Daniel might have tried to take the hotel. But Radford? Radford was playing for the company. The entire chain. And if Ezra didn't wake up soon, Renee would be next. That night, she drove to the hospital. She hadn't gone yet. Not since the night they'd found him. But now, she needed to see him. Needed proof he was still here. Ezra's room was on the 7th floor. Private. Quiet. A single security guard sat outside, head buried in a crossword. He didn't stop her. Inside, the lights were dim. Machines beeped in soft, slow rhythms. Ezra lay still under a thin white blanket. Tubes in his arms. Bandage along his side. Face pale, bruised at the temple. She sat down beside him. I'm in over my head, she whispered. And I know you warned me. But I didn't know it'd be like this. She laid the photo on the bedside table. Radford was never on your side. The room was silent. Then, a twitch. Small. Barely there. His fingers. Renee froze. She stared at his hand. Waited. Nothing. But she could have sworn. Then again. His ring finger moved. Once. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed his hand. Ezra? Can you hear me? No response. But she didn't care. Because he was in there. Fighting. And now she was fighting with him. Don't you dare leave me alone in this. She looked down at him, voice trembling. Because the next move's yours. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty when Renee stepped outside. The quiet pressed in around her like a warning. She gripped the steering wheel with shaking hands before starting the engine. Ezra was alive. He'd moved. Maybe just a twitch, but she saw it. More than anything, she needed him to wake up. Because the walls were closing in. Back at the hotel, Radford's influence was starting to show. New faces in tailored suits had begun appearing in the lobby, consultants, they claimed. Temporary advisors from corporate. They didn't speak to staff. Didn't answer questions. But they watched. Everyone. Everything. They watched her. She kept the photo hidden in her jacket pocket, close to her body like a second heartbeat. Whoever had left it in her office knew things she didn't. And they weren't just watching, they were trying to tell her something. Quietly. From inside. She needed to find them before Radford found her. 2 days passed. Still no sign of Ezra waking up. Still no word from Morales. And Radford? He was already moving. On Thursday morning, Renee received a notice from the Fairmont Grand's legal department. A temporary reassignment of executive authority, citing a clause in Ezra's ownership transfer documents, buried on page 27, that required board reaffirmation within 30 days of medical incapacitation. She had 24 hours to respond. Otherwise, the board could legally strip her of control and place the hotel under Radford's management. Frankie slammed her hand down on the desk when Renee showed her the letter. "This is a hit job," she growled. "They planted that clause. No way Ezra wrote that." "He didn't," Renee said. "Radford amended the contract before it was signed. Ezra probably didn't notice. He trusted him." Frankie rubbed her temples. "So what do we do?" "I stall the board," Renee said. "And while I do that, you help me find whoever left that photo." Frankie narrowed her eyes. "You think they're still here?" "They have to be. Whoever they are, they knew I'd come to that office alone. They knew I'd find it. And they knew I'd understand what it meant." Frankie leaned back in her chair. "Then we start in the guts of the building. Engineering, laundry, sub-basement. That's where people go when they want to disappear." The underbelly of the Fairmont Grand was a world Renee hadn't seen in years. Concrete floors. Flickering bulbs. Ducts and pipes running like arteries through the ceiling. No guests came down here. No suits. Just steam, sweat, and secrets. Frankie guided her past locked storage rooms, down into a corridor most people didn't even know existed. "This used to be a bomb shelter," she said. "Back in the 60s. They gutted it and turned it into dry storage, then forgot about it." They reached the end of the hallway. A faded keypad glowed faintly beside a rusted steel door. Frankie entered a code. The lock clicked open. Inside was a narrow room lit by 2 desk lamps and a pair of old security monitors. One screen showed a live feed from the boiler room. The other showed the hallway outside the executive offices. Someone was watching. A figure sat at the desk. Young. Slender. Curled under a hoodie. When they turned around, Renee's breath caught. "Malik," she said. The IT kid looked sheepish. "Hey." Frankie stepped back. "You?" Malik rubbed his neck. "I didn't know what to do. After Ezra gave you the hotel, I started noticing things, files being deleted, backups disappearing. I knew Radford was erasing something. I started saving copies. Hiding them. You left the photo." Malik nodded. "That picture's from a hidden camera in one of the old access tunnels. Ezra had it set up weeks ago. He told me not to tell anyone. He was building a timeline. Trying to catch Radford. Daniel was just a distraction." Frankie looked at Renee. "That's why Radford kept him around. To take the fall." Malik pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it on the table. Ezra was recording meetings, copying call logs, even financial transfers. "It's all here. Enough to prove Radford was bleeding the company dry and planning a full takeover. Ezra was trying to stop it quietly." Renee took the drive in shaking hands. "And now I finish it," she said. That night, she locked herself in the old bomb shelter with Malik's drive and a laptop. She stayed up until 3:40 a.m., scanning everything. Dozens of documents. Audio recordings of private calls. Bank records. Meeting transcripts. Radford wasn't just stealing. He was dismantling the company piece by piece, siphoning funds into a separate holding firm. And he was weeks, maybe days, away from gutting the Fairmont Grand and flipping it into a private luxury buyout. Hundreds of staff would be fired. The building would be stripped of its identity, sold to foreign investors. And once the clause kicked in and she was removed, there'd be no one left to stop him. Unless... She sat back and stared at the screen. There was a second folder on the drive. Titled, Wellspring. She clicked it. Inside was a signed agreement. Ezra Lockhart and the Charleston Cultural Foundation. A preservation grant. $30 million. Meant to protect the Fairmont Grand as a historical site. Keep it off the market. Keep it in the city's hands. He'd planned everything. Right to the end. He just didn't have time to make it official. But she did. Renee grabbed her phone and dialed the number listed at the bottom of the agreement. A woman answered on the second ring. Charleston Cultural Foundation. "This is Renee Jefferson," she said. "I have something Ezra Lockhart was trying to finish before he was attacked. I'm listening. I need a meeting. Tomorrow morning. And I need someone with the power to sign." "You'll have it," the voice said. 10 a.m. sharp. Renee hung up. This wasn't about stopping Radford anymore. This was about saving the soul of the hotel. And she only had one day left to do it. Renee arrived at the Charleston Cultural Foundation building just before 10 a.m., dressed in the closest thing she had to a power outfit, black blazer, dark jeans, and boots that didn't slip when she walked fast. The flash drive was in her coat pocket. The original Wellspring agreement was tucked in a leather folder under her arm. This was it. The move Ezra didn't get to make. A woman in a gray linen dress met her at the front desk and led her to a second-floor conference room. Inside were three people, a white-haired preservationist in round glasses, a middle-aged black woman in a city planning badge, and a stern-faced man with a file of papers and a gold pen. They all looked up as Renee walked in. "Ms. Jefferson," the man said. "We've reviewed the documents you sent. They're impressive. But there's one problem." Renee kept her face still. "What's that?" Ezra Lockhart never signed the final version. The room went quiet. She opened the leather folder. Pulled out the original copy Ezra had annotated by hand. His initials were scribbled in the margins, a faint thumbprint smudged in the corner from a day he'd spilled espresso during their fourth rooftop meeting. "I don't have the final signature," Renee said. "But I have proof of intent. Financial transfers, meeting transcripts, a timeline of preparation, all of it backs this up. And if you don't believe me, wait until I show you who tried to stop him from finishing this." She reached into her pocket and placed Malik's flash drive on the table. Ezra was trying to protect this hotel. Radford's trying to turn it into a trophy for offshore billionaires. If you don't sign onto this deal now, you won't get another chance. The preservationist leaned forward. "You're asking us to file a landmark status application immediately. I'm asking you to seal this building's identity, so it can't be flipped, gutted, or sold without a public fight. If you want to preserve Charleston's history, this is the line." The city planner opened her mouth. Then shut it. Her eyes were locked on the documents. The man with the gold pen reached forward, slowly, and clicked the pen open. "What happens if Lockhart dies?" he asked. Renee didn't blink. "Then I finish what he started." A pause. Then, without a word, he signed. The landmark application was filed that afternoon. And just like that, Radford lost his biggest weapon, the ability to sell. By the time Renee got back to the hotel, the boardroom lights were already on. Radford was waiting. He stood beside the table, suit impeccable, expression calm. "You've been busy," he said. She stepped inside. "So have you. Reassignment letter? Really? You thought I wouldn't catch the claws you buried? You're out of your depth, Renee. You were always a liability. Ezra saw something in you, but I see what's really there, an underfed, overworked staffer who got lucky. You're not a CEO. You're a mascot." She tossed the signed cultural agreement onto the table. "The hotel's protected now. Try to sell it. Try to bulldoze it. The city will make sure you drown in paperwork until you suffocate." Radford's eyes narrowed. "I've got more," she added. "Your voice on tape. Your money trail. I know about the holding company in Delaware. The transfers through the Bahamas. I have enough to bury your reputation and drag you into court." He looked at her for a long time. Then he stepped forward, too close, and leaned in. "You think this is over?" "No," she said. "I think this is the first time you've lost." He stared at her, that silver pen still clipped neatly to his chest. Then he turned and walked out of the room. She watched him go. It was done. The next morning, she stood again at Ezra's hospital bed. The light through the window was softer. Hopeful. She set the final, signed Wellspring agreement on the bedside table. "I did it," she said. "Your name's all over the paperwork. You're the hero of the story. But they're gonna know who helped you finish it." She took his hand. It was still warm. "Come back when you're ready," she whispered. "You've got a building waiting. And a city that needs you." His fingers twitched again. This time, twice. 3 days later, Ezra Lockhart opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was her. Renee smiled. "You're late." He laughed, hoarse but real. "You held it down?" "Barely." He looked around the room, eyes heavy with questions. She leaned forward and said softly, "We saved the hotel." Then she added, without meaning to, "And now it's ours." Ezra blinked slowly, adjusting to the light, the machines, the quiet weight of being awake in a world that had tried to erase him. "Ours?" he echoed, voice raw and slow. Renee nodded, brushing a piece of hair from her eyes, but not the emotion building behind them. "I didn't cash the check," she said. "But I cashed the risk." Ezra tried to smile. It was more of a grimace. "I always thought you'd walk away." "I thought about it," she admitted. "But then I remembered what it felt like to watch this place chew up good people. My mom. Me. You. I'm done letting people like Radford call that normal." His jaw tightened at the name. "I know he was working with Daniel," Ezra said. "But I didn't know how deep it went." "Deep," Renee confirmed. "They tried to frame you. Tried to bury me. and they almost got away with it. She opened the folder she'd brought and laid it on the bed beside him. This is everything we have on them: contracts, audio, transfers. Radford doesn't just lose. He disappears. Quietly. You're clean. But it's not over. Ezra turned his head toward her, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want to do? She didn't hesitate. I want to run this place right. I want to finish what you started. He closed his eyes, and for a second she thought he might pass out. But when he opened them again, they were clearer than before. Steadier. Then I'm not the boss anymore, he said. She swallowed. You're saying? I gave you the hotel, Renee. I meant it. And now I'm making it permanent. Not just legally. Publicly. He motioned for the nurse's button, and when the nurse rushed in a few moments later, Ezra rasped, I need my lawyer. The announcement went live 48 hours later. The Fairmont Grand Hotel held a surprise press conference in the main courtyard. Reporters crowded into the marble lobby with cameras, microphones, and the low thrum of questions hanging in the air. Ezra sat in a wheelchair under the shade of a magnolia tree, thin but calm. Beside him stood Renee, wearing a black suit jacket and no notes. She looked out at the crowd and took a breath. This building isn't just brick and rooms, she said. It's memory. It's pain. It's pride. And for too long, it's been run by people who thought those things didn't matter. Flashes popped. I used to work here as a waitress. I watched this place swallow people. I watched people disappear. I saw Ezra Lockhart try to change that. And when they tried to stop him, when they nearly killed him, I knew I couldn't walk away. She turned to look at Ezra. He gave her the smallest nod. I now own a controlling interest in this hotel. I didn't buy it. I earned it. And I intend to run it with the same people this place used to ignore. Behind her, the staff started to step forward: Frankie, Malik, housekeepers, bellhops, cooks, servers. They weren't in suits. They weren't polished. But they were real. This is who we are now, Renee said. Not perfect. But honest. And not afraid anymore. One reporter raised a hand. Ms. Jefferson, how does it feel to go from waitress to owner in 1 week? Renee smiled, not polished, not practiced. Just herself. It doesn't feel real yet, she said. But I'm not here because of a miracle. I'm here because someone gave me a shot, and I didn't waste it. She looked back at Ezra, who gave her a tired, but proud smile. I helped a drunk billionaire get home. 1 week later, I became the hotel owner. The crowd laughed softly. But now, she said, voice steady, eyes clear. Now I'm staying. Later that night, she stood in the penthouse alone. The sun was setting over the harbor, casting long shadows over the glass floor. She could still hear the cameras outside, the fading press, the last conversations. Ezra had gone home under doctor's orders. But before he left, he'd handed her one last thing. His key. The master's yours now, he'd said. Now she held it in her hand, metal warm from her grip. She walked to the edge of the room and looked out over Charleston. The sky was violet and orange, the water sparkling in the distance. The lights of the hotel were starting to blink on, floor by floor. She remembered her mother's hands, red and cracked from cleaning. She remembered nights spent counting coins at the kitchen table. She remembered being invisible. Now she was not. Now, they would see her. And she would not waste the view. The first week of Renee's official ownership felt less like a victory lap and more like walking barefoot across broken glass. The phone never stopped ringing. Contractors wanted approvals. Lawyers asked for meetings. News outlets hounded her for interviews. Half the board still questioned her authority. The other half smiled too much when they spoke to her. Even Frankie, solid as ever, started hovering more than she used to. You good? She asked one morning, handing Renee a cinnamon roll and a black coffee, her usual, even if she rarely had time to eat. Renee nodded, but her voice was strained. Barely slept last night. Frankie smirked. Yeah, well, CEOs don't get naps. You're lucky if you remember lunch. Renee sat down in the staff lounge, pressing the coffee to her forehead like a cold compress. I miss hiding in the kitchen. No one ever asked me to sign anything back there. Frankie leaned against the doorframe. You sure you still want this? Too late to back out now. Frankie raised an eyebrow. Not what I asked. Renee met her gaze. There was a pause. I want it, she said. But not like this. I wanted a chance to fix something broken, not spend my days putting out fires started by the guy who tried to burn it all down. Frankie gave a slow nod. Then don't let the fires win. Later that afternoon, Renee stepped into the archives room, one of the oldest, dustiest wings of the hotel, filled with ledgers, maintenance logs, photos from another century. Ezra had once said if you wanted to understand a building, you had to read its diary. She was starting to believe him. She ran her fingers along the rows of file drawers until she found what she was looking for: staff incidents, prior owners. It was heavy. Inside were documents no one had touched in years. Write-ups. Termination records. Unpaid claims. But one folder stopped her cold. Jefferson, Lila. Her mother. She hadn't even known this existed. Renee opened the folder with careful hands. Inside were 3 pages. The first, a formal reprimand, dated 3 weeks before her mother collapsed in a linen closet and was sent home to die. The second, a medical recommendation from a company nurse, advising a leave of absence for fatigue and persistent coughing. The third, a denied time-off request. Denied by Daniel Holt. Renee felt the heat rise in her chest. Not just denied. Marked with a red stamp, final warning. No more missed days. She stared at it. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was negligence. And now she had proof. Her mother hadn't just died working too hard, she'd been pushed. Renee stood up fast, the chair scraping behind her. She wasn't just here to fix the future. She was going to expose the past. That night, she called a meeting in the ballroom, not for the board, not for investors, but for staff. She stood on the same spot where she'd given her first speech, only now the air was heavier, sharper. "I found something," she said. "About my mother." The room quieted. She asked for medical leave. She was denied. By Daniel Holt. She held up the stamped denial letter. She died 3 weeks later. A murmur ran through the room. "I don't say this for pity," Renee said. "I say this because it matters. Because it's not just about the people at the top anymore. This hotel doesn't get to erase the lives it broke along the way. Not while I'm standing here." Frankie stood straighter beside her. "We're starting a memorial program," Renee continued. "For every staff member who was harmed, silenced, or lost in the cracks. Their names will be remembered. Their families will be compensated. This building has ghosts. I'm not afraid of them." One of the kitchen workers, an older man named Wallace, stepped forward and took off his cap. "My sister worked here in the 90s. Died of pneumonia after 6 straight doubles. They told us she quit. She didn't." Another voice joined in. Then another. And another. The room filled with stories. And Renee let them speak. Because it wasn't just her story anymore. It was all of theirs. Later that night, alone in the penthouse, she called Ezra. He was still healing, still tired, but sharper every day. "I think I know what we do next," she said. He didn't ask what. He just said, "Do it." And hung up. Because he trusted her. Because this was hers now. And she was done surviving. Now? She was rewriting the story. The next morning, Renee stood in front of the old service elevator in the West Wing, one of the few places in the hotel untouched since the 1960s. The paint peeled at the corners, and the button stuck when pressed. It hadn't run properly in years. It was where her mother had collapsed. Renee pressed her hand against the cool steel of the elevator door and closed her eyes. "You were never just a number," she whispered. Then she turned to Frankie, who stood behind her with a maintenance folder in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "You sure about this?" Frankie asked. Renee nodded. "I want it sealed. Not renovated. Not replaced. I want it left just like this. As a reminder." Frankie handed over a permit form, already signed. "Then it's done. A brass plaque would go up next week, Lila Jefferson Service Corridor, dedicated to all who carried this hotel without recognition." Renee didn't know if it would bring peace. But it was a start. Upstairs, chaos waited. Radford had officially resigned. He made no public statement, left no apology. Just a one-line email from a private account: "I'm withdrawing. You've made your point." But his shadow didn't vanish. The damage he'd done to the company's finances, morale, and reputation would take years to undo. Guests still whispered. Investors were still uneasy. But slowly, room by room, shift by shift, the hotel was coming back to life. Renee's office was now a rotating door of real problems: unpaid invoices, an elevator inspection gone wrong, a chef who wanted to unionize, 100 things she didn't understand but had to handle. Still, there were moments. Small ones. Like when Malik came by to say the IT team, for the first time ever, had been given a seat at the operations table. Or when one of the housekeepers cried quietly in her office because she'd been promoted to supervisor after 17 years and no one had ever remembered her birthday, until now. And then there was the envelope that showed up on her desk late Thursday. No stamp. No signature. Inside, a photo. Ezra, maybe 19, in a cheap suit, working the Fairmont front desk. Smiling. On the back, a note in handwriting she didn't recognize. He never stopped believing this place could be more. She didn't know who sent it. She just kept it. Framed it. Set it beside her mother's old employee badge on her desk. That weekend, Ezra came back to the hotel for the first time since the attack. He walked slowly, still stiff from surgery, but when he reached the lobby, the staff broke into applause. No fanfare. No speeches. Just clapping, raw and honest. He blinked hard, then smiled and waved a hand, trying to wave it off. "Sit down before you fall down," Renee said, guiding him to one of the armchairs near the fireplace. He laughed softly. "You fixed the carpet. You always hated that rip." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the lobby move around them. New staff mixed with old. Laughter spilled from the cafe. The concierge desk had a line. "I almost ruined this," Ezra said quietly. "You saved it," Renee replied. "You just didn't know how to finish it." He looked at her then. "But you did." Renee leaned back. "I'm learning. Every damn day." "You could still walk away," he said. "You've done more than anyone ever asked." She shook her head. "This isn't about proving something anymore. It's about owning it. All of it. I'm not walking away. I'm walking this thing forward." Ezra studied her. "You know the board's going to try to sweet-talk you into selling your shares eventually. They're going to say you don't belong in rooms with them." She grinned. "Then they're in for a very long meeting." That night, the hotel threw a staff-only rooftop party. No guests. No press. Just the people who made the place run. Malik DJ'd off a speaker card. Frankie brought her own whiskey and poured it into teacups like she always did. Someone dragged out twinkle lights. Someone else brought cupcakes. And at the edge of the rooftop, leaning against the railing, Renee looked out over Charleston. The city pulsed beneath her, warm, alive, breathing with history. Ezra stepped beside her, shoulder brushing hers. "Remember when you carried me up here, drunk off my ass?" She snorted. "You were half asleep. Dead weight." He looked at her, serious now. "You could have left me there. You didn't. You gave me a key," she said. "Turns out it opened more than a door." He didn't say anything. Just leaned there, quiet beside her. And for a moment, neither of them needed to speak. Because they were standing in the center of something they'd built from the broken pieces of everything that came before. Not perfect. Not finished. But theirs. It rained the next morning. Not the light kind that kisses windows, but a steady, heavy soak that made the streets slick and slowed the pace of everyone coming through the hotel's grand revolving doors. Renee stood in her office barefoot, shoes in one hand, watching the storm roll across the Charleston harbor. Her desk was covered in open folders, a half-drunk coffee, a box of guest comment cards she still hadn't read, and the framed photo of Ezra in his early days at the front desk. The badge beside it, her mother's, still had the crease where Renee had gripped it too tightly the night she found the incident file. A soft knock broke her focus. Frankie stepped in without waiting for an answer, holding a single envelope. "No return address," she said, setting it down on the desk. Renee turned it over. The paper was thick. Heavy. Inside was a card. No writing. Just a photo. Of her. Behind the bar, smiling at a little girl perched on a bar stool. Renee had no memory of the moment, but the look on her face was unmistakable. Joy. Light. Presence. On the back, again, a note. "That's the day I knew the hotel had a soul. Took me longer to realize you were it." Ezra's handwriting. She sat down hard. Frankie looked at her. "You okay?" Renee nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I finally am." The day unraveled like they all did now, 10 things at once, then 10 more. Staff complaints. Plumbing updates. A flower delivery mix-up that somehow rerouted arrangements to the wrong wedding. Renee fixed them all, not perfectly, but clearly. Directly. She'd learned how to hold power without letting it hold her. She was on her way to the laundry wing when she passed the new plaque by the service elevator. Someone had added fresh flowers, wild ones, just tucked into the frame. And someone had written a note on a sticky pad below the dedication. For everyone who gave everything and got nothing back. Until now. She didn't know who had left it. She didn't need to. That evening, she walked the lobby one last time. It was a ritual now. Not just to check on staff, but to feel it. The hum of it. The rhythm of a place that was once hollow and afraid, now slowly learning to breathe again. She passed the bar, where the bartender, Marcus, winked and slid her a lemonade. No questions. She passed the piano, where an old man played a soft, familiar jazz tune she couldn't quite place. She passed a couple arguing quietly near the elevator, then laughing as the door closed behind them. Life. Real, messy, uncontained. Home. And when she turned, Ezra was standing near the fountain in the center of the lobby. He wore a gray sport coat and no tie. Still healing, still pale, but upright. Watching her. She walked to him. "You shouldn't be out of bed," she said. He smiled. "I didn't want to miss it." "Miss what?" Ezra looked around the lobby. Then right at her. This. All of it. The moment when it stopped being mine and started being yours. She didn't say anything. Because she felt it, too. This wasn't the hotel he tried to save. It was the one she rebuilt. Ezra reached into his coat pocket and held something out. The original master key. The one she'd returned the morning after she helped him to bed. I kept it, he said. But it's yours now. For real. Renee stared at it. She didn't need a key anymore. She was the key. But she took it anyway. Because it meant something. Because she'd earned it. Because sometimes, the right doors only open when someone trusts you to walk through them. She looked up. You coming to the staff dinner tonight? Ezra smiled. Only if I don't have to give a speech. She laughed. Deal. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, two people who had nothing in common until everything happened. A drunk billionaire. A black waitress with a busted paycheck and a sharp mind. Now, the hotel was theirs. And more than that. It wasn't a miracle. It was a fight. A choice. A story no one else could have written. Renee slipped the key into her pocket, turned toward the elevator, and walked into her future like it was already hers.